Шановні колеги, ми продовжуємо робочий день. До слова запрошується представник Головного управління розвідки Міністерства оборони України пан Vadym Skybytskyi.
Good afternoon. I'm ready to present you information about the situation around the borders of Ukraine. As of today, the situation in the NATO area remains complicated and could be characterized with the threat of offensive actions on behalf of our enemies. The continued high level of military readiness in the 1st and 2nd Army Corps at the borders of Ukraine and in the eastern Ukraine. Revival of the regular flights of the reconnaissance aircrafts Il-20 along Ukrainian border and active use of drones. Intensive supplies of the military weaponry, fuels and oils. The main intelligence department had registered 41 violations of the Minsk agreements in part of withdrawal of heavy weaponry. As usually, these were tanks, MLRS systems, and heavy artillery. We revealed more than 104 MLRS systems which are subject to withdrawal from 25-kilometer area in line with the Minsk agreements. This registered information was supplied to the SMM OSCE. Also, the challenge of military provocations against Ukrainian troops continue. Thus, on Talakivka and Zolote, the enemies launched more than 383 shells. In total, there were more than almost 400 shellings of our positions. The military command of the Russian Federation devotes big attention to reconnaissance activities. They also track the electronic situation. So they launch the reconnaissance aircrafts along the Azov Sea, which is able to carry out reconnaissance at the depths of more than 4 kilometers. Also, we have registered high intensity in use of drones by the Russian occupational troops and band formations. Also, drones were used for correction of fire on Ukrainian positions. Thus, we counted and registered the use of more than 24 drones. Russia continues to supply military technique and weaponry to Ukrainian territory. During the last week, railway supplies and trucks supplied more than 200 tons of fuels and oils, more than 400 tons of ammunition, 8 self-propelled installations, and 3 self-propelled vehicles. During the last time, Russian command contributed special effort to strengthening the repair centers for vehicles in the occupied territory. Tukuteynikova and Donetsk repair centers, special fuels, oils, and equipment was supplied. Also, near Dobzhansky, they revive the Center for Repairs of Tanks and supply spare parts from the territory of Russian Federation. Also, the additional manning of the 1st and 2nd Army Corps continues. More than 300 of novices arrived to the 6th separate motorized detachment and
Russian side also continues to train the personnel for the 1st and 2nd Army Corps in Krasny Sulin of Rostov region, that is 20 kilometers from the state border with Ukraine. There is the Russian training center on training the volunteers who in the future will be moved to the temporary occupied territory of Donbas to participate in military actions. The main intelligence department of the Ministry of Defense continues its work on establishing the losses in the personnel in the units of the enemy. According to our data, the losses of the Russian occupational forces for the period from 5th to the 11th of August 2016 are not less than 36 killed and 24 wounded. The most 11th Regiment suffered most losses. They have 32 killed and 5 wounded servicemen. The military reconnaissance of Ukraine established that the leadership of the Center of Territorial Troops of the Southern military unit of the Armed Forces of Russia in the period from the 8th to the 11th of August were inspecting the situation in the 1st and 2nd Army Corps. In the result of that work, the command of the 2nd Brigade, Luhansk and 2nd Army Corps were indicated that they are not well managing the personnel of the unit. So the colonel of the Armed Forces of Russia, Bondarev, was fired, and the General Lieutenant Valery Asapov, that has been on the territory of Ukraine from the August last year, will be moved to the position of the to some other position. The level of threats to the national security of Ukraine is still high. As part of the strategic training of KAZ 2016, the main stage of which is planned for the 5th and 10th of August in the pre-border territory to Ukraine. There will be the big group of armed forces of Russian Federation. In these conditions, on the territory of the occupied Crimea, the following actions are taking place. The troops are moved from the points of their permanent dislocation to military test fields. According to the plans of the commandership of the Southern unit, during the training of Caucasus 2016, there will be almost all units of Crimean group of troops located in this test field. On the 8th of August, the units from the 15th Rocket Brigade Sevastopol were moved to the test field Stary Krim, Old Crimea. There is a rotation of the units of armed forces of Russia, which are located in the north of Crimea. instead of the 11th Brigade, the group arrived from Stavropol from the 5th of August. They are moving to their point of permanent location via Kerchenskaya ferry crossing. The personnel is brought to the points of permanent dislocation by military aviation. The elections to the State Duma of Russia is getting closer, and we see the strengthening of administrative police regime and working on the scenarios of reaction to the aggravation of the situation in Crimea. Now, on the territory of the occupied peninsula, there is the high level of terroristic threat, which is the blue level, which was introduced on the 7th of August. The units of the Ministry of Interior, Northern Caucasus Regional Commandership of the Federal Troops of the National Guard and the Black Sea Fleet of Russia are involved into anti-terrorist measures. The working group of the troops arrived to Bilbek Airport, and they will be involved into preparatory work to the training Caucasus 2016. The first question is Crim Rally. They failed to come here, and I will tell what the question was.
What do you know about the personality of Mr. Panov and other figures who are blamed by the Russian Federation as terrorists planning terrorist acts? Well, I can say that these are Ukrainian citizens, they are patriots, but they are not employees of the main intelligence department. Tarasenko Violetta, Public TV, Donbas. The last week, during a briefing, Alexander Hug mentioned that Ukrainian side also violates Minsk agreements in parts of withdrawal. How would you comment on this? This do not fall within my sphere of competence. You should ask this question to the general staff. Nevertheless, what I can add, that Ukrainian side makes much effort to comply with Minsk agreements, and their reality shows that we simply respond to provocations and that challenge from heavy weaponry, which are registered today. They show that we know that heavy weaponry, which is targeting goals in our territory. The next question, whether this more intensive, more tense situation that you described could be seen as a preparation to some bigger offensive, or how would you comment situation in Crimea? I believe that the recent statements by Russian federations are called to disguise strengthening of military forces in Crimea, to disguise the maneuvers close to Ukrainian borders and the deployment of troops coming from Russian Federation. We believe that further actions of Russian Federation will be aimed at escalation of tense around Ukraine. Associated Press, whether there's a real threat that Russian occupational troops may try to violate the administrative border with Crimea and moved to Kherson, especially on the eve of the Independence Day. We can expect for any provocations on behalf of Russia, but in line with the order of High Commander of Ukrainian troops, President Poroshenko, we have strengthened our actions aimed at maintenance and strengthening Ukrainian sovereignty. There was a video in the internet, the video of an interrogation of the so-called terrorists. We analyzed that video, and we believe that after pressure made upon him, Ukrainian citizen Panov made so-called confidence about employees of the main intelligence department, or imagined or deemed employees. All those people whom he mentioned, they are not employees of the main intelligence department. You described the situation in Donbas, in Crimea. It became obvious that Russia is preparing itself to some actions as to our northern borders. What you comment about that information that Russians had organized some military base jointly with Belarus, and in some other places, in line with the plans of Russian command. They continue to form military groups around Ukraine. In Klintsy, they have finished formation of the 28th Special Brigade, around 20,000 of servicemen, around 4,000 of tanks, and currently they prepare it to operational use. Also, they move troops in other regions, formation of the 3rd Division and 150th Division in Rostov Oblast. They widely use Kadamovsky and Kuzminsky military fields, and we keep this new developments under control and observe all the movements of Russian troops towards Ukrainian borders. Associated Press. Yesterday there was a report in mass media about fire exchange between Russian FSB and some military agencies, in Russian military agencies in Crimea. Our data shows that yesterday there was fire opened between FSB and border guard officers near Armyansk. The reason was that both military units proved unable to identify each other as the allies, and they opened fire, and they have losses. They have killed people, they have wounded people. Further questions? Ukraine TV channel, the Ministry of Defense Intelligence Department informed about military provocations along the entire contact line. What were the grounds to make such a statement? The military intelligence and reconnaissance department of Ukraine provides operational reports on the movements along Ukrainian border and along the contact line. We believe that before and on the eve of Independence Day there might be stronger provocations. The most hotspots are near Mariupol and near Donetsk. The situation during last several days near Mariupol already became more hot. Moreover, we believe that by winter our enemies might make an attempt to conquer new territories which would allow them to support already occupied territories. Thank you for your attention.